Hey everybody, welcome back to Dad's Den. I'm Dad, this is my den, and today I have for you what I like to think of as a very timely review of a motion picture. Um, it's called Who's Minding the Mint, and it was made in like 1967. So I'm only a few decades out, but there's kind of a point to me doing this little review. Well, number one, I just watched it, so it's fresh in my mind. Number two, it's mediocre. It's a mediocre film, and that of course makes it sound like, well, if it's just mediocre, and if it's that old, why even talk about it? One of the things that I like to focus on in life is finding hidden gems or finding value in things that don't seem to necessarily have much value. And I think mediocre films, which, let's be honest, is the vast majority of films. There's a clear minority of films that are absolutely horrible, a clear minority of films that are absolutely wonderful. Most stuff, it's kind of in the middle there. Some of those things become cult classics. Some of those things a particular individual might love, whereas most people don't. But and some of them are just they just don't really get traction with anybody. To me, this is one of those kind of movies. Well, there are a few interesting things about it though, that I think are worth talking about. Now, one of them is you actually had a lot of talented people involved in the film. For a start, and I suppose people might argue like he's not necessarily one of the most widely known creators in the world, but you have Norman Maurer. Now, he was the son-in-law of Mo Howard of the Three Stooges. Did a lot of work with them later on in their careers, and I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a dog scratching on my door, and he's not coming in because he's insane. So you had Norman Maurer involved with it. Side characters: Victor Buono, Bob Denver, of course Gilligan's Island, and Maynard G. Krebs from Dobie Gillis, Milton Berle. So you had some solid talents in it, although probably more TV talents than movie talents. But you did have some talented folks in there. Hey, in fact, the voice of Frosty the Snowman from the classic Rankin Bass cartoon is in the movie, just a little bit part as a security guard. So there's talent going into this movie, but it just doesn't really gel. I think there's a few reasons for that. The lead in the film, to me, just didn't have the charisma to really hold it together. And I don't think he was really the right kind of actor to hold it together. The film involves a sort of accident that leads to the lead having to break the law in a pretty big way. And there are complications that go along with this. The movie, to me, it wanted to be a madcap film, but it wasn't madcap enough. Sometimes it wanted to be sort of a cool film, cool sort of comedy. It wasn't really cool enough. The timing was off. I feel like if you had maybe like a Jack Lemmon in the role, he could play that sort of good guy who is doing something he doesn't really want to do and getting frustrated along the way, and I think he could make something like that work. And it just didn't work with the cast they had, and I think they made some story errors as well. The lead character is sort of living the life of a cool bachelor, doesn't want to get stuck in any long-term relationships. He borrows everything. Very cool apartment, but it's all on loan, and when they finally repossess it, he takes out new loans and gets new furniture. He's that kind of guy, right? I guess maybe he's like the Andrew Tate of his day, if you will. And there's a woman who is a good woman who clearly adores him, and he wants nothing to do with her. That's part of the story. But I feel like if he was a good guy who has this good woman, but who gets stuck having to do something bad and has to start making some moral choices about, if I go down this path, I'm going to lose her. If I go down the path that leads to her, I could get into it. That to me would be probably more interesting and probably more opportunities for comedy. But they didn't go down that path. So what you end up with is a film that's really kind of mediocre. So why watch it? It's a bit of a time capsule to that period in the 60s. There's some great shots of the decor, the clothes. You also, especially from those kind of movies that were, I don't know, a little more mainstream. They weren't edgy. They weren't cutting edge films. You learn a little bit more about the way people spoke and the way they carried themselves, and the way they viewed the world. And I think that's important. We talk a lot nowadays about diversity, multiculturalism. The idea of you need to get to learn to know people from elsewhere, right? If you're an American, it's worthwhile to learn about how people live in Mexico or in Mongolia or in Zaire. That's the Congo again now. Either way, that's worthwhile, because while in learning that you're going to learn about differences, more importantly, you're going to learn about similarities and about some of the core things that make us human. And therefore, these people who come from this other land, who may seem a little bit strange to you, whatever, you kind of go, oh yeah, but you know what? They have the same. Ultimately, they have the same hopes, desires, fears, joys, and loves that I do. So they're people, and I'm going to disagree with them about things maybe, but I'm certainly going to recognize them as my fellow human beings and important. Well, that kind of multiculturalism isn't just a matter of place. It's also a matter of time. And this is a big issue nowadays with people looking back on their ancestors or on older generations and judging them very harshly about some of the things they did or thought or said, without understanding that those people were living in a different culture. And while you are going to find differences in their culture and your culture, you're going to find similarities too. And when you watch films like this and read old books, you get a better understanding of what makes a human being, despite the differences. You also, of course, are going to get some insight into how our culture of today came to be, because it emerged from those past cultures. And I think you get an appreciation of what those folks were going through, why they did the things they did, where those attitudes came from, but also the way those attitudes have changed, the way people changed those attitudes, whatever they might be. But oftentimes about learning to accept folks who they thought were outsiders, foreigners, the others, and learning to accept and value their humanity, and therefore not caring maybe so much about the differences. Look, sometimes the differences can be very difficult to surmount. Maybe they could even be insurmountable. They can happen. But very often they're not. And we can come together as people Again, you may not fall in love with a group of people. You may not necessarily like some of the things they do, but you can come and accept them and say, hey, okay, look, ultimately they're okay. I don't want to do what they're doing, and they don't want to do what I'm doing, but that's all right. We can live together. We can coexist. We can put up with each other. Because, I got news for you. Nobody's going anywhere. Whatever the conflicts are, win, lose, or draw, everybody's going to be here when it's over. It's like in the NFL. If the Steelers beat the Cowboys, it doesn't mean the Cowboys go away and never come back. Cowboys are coming back. They're going to play again. You're going to win some. You're going to lose some. And I think this is a lesson people are in need of learning. These kinds of films, and I got to tell you again, the film doesn't work super well. I laughed a couple times during it, and literally only a couple times, but I didn't hate it watching it. I wasn't, oh God, it was horrible. It was just sort of like, it was a standard sort of tepid mainstream comedy from the late 60s. It's similar to some of the stuff that Walt Disney used to produce, the live action stuff they used to produce. They're inoffensive. They're fine. Some people are going to laugh at it more than others. This one in particular, I think things just didn't quite hit, but it wasn't terrible to sit through. And when you sit through enough of those kinds of things, again, you do start to appreciate people for who they are as individuals, rather than as these sort of simple collectives that people like to shove other people into, where you treat people like objects. Man, that's no good. So get out there, read some old books, watch some old TV shows, watch some old movies. Don't watch it with a judgmental eye. Look for the similarities rather than the differences. The differences are obvious. They spring up immediately. Look for the similarities. Look for the humanity in people. And if you can, if you can forgive another present-day culture on Earth that doesn't have the same, maybe entirely same moral values that you do, and you can say, well, that's their call. Maybe you can do that with some of your ancestors too. Maybe you can forgive them and say, hey, that was their culture. It was what it was. I'm glad things have changed. But I don't have to hate these people. I don't have to cancel these people. And there is value in these people. As we change through time, we get rid of some bad things. Sometimes, though, we get rid of some good things too. And people have to kind of rediscover those things. So there you go. This is my sort of kind of review of Who's Minding the Mint. And a few thoughts on learning about other people and maybe not being quite so judgmental. Trust me, it's better to have a world to fall in love with than a world that you're constantly at war with. It just is. Forgiving and accepting faults is how you build relationships within your family, with romantically, with siblings. If you don't do those things, you end up alone, which is a terrible place to be. So there you go. My second video. But quick reference to my first video, which was about the toys that I got at Daiso, the Japanese 100-yen store. One of those toys was called Petty Blocks. It's sort of like Legos. I got one that was a transforming tank to robot toy. And I put it together. And I got to tell you something. It was a little difficult because the pieces are really, really, really small. If I can hold this up, maybe you can get an idea. These are very small pieces. But you know what? I have not put together Legos, like really put together Legos, in, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years? No, gosh. Let me think. I probably was no more than, oh my goodness, it could be 35 or 40 years. And it was actually really fun. So this is the tank form. Let's see if I can, the robot form is not overly complicated. Oh yeah, here we go. So you kind of move, whoops, let's see, I got to move the arms up and out of the way. a bit. The body comes up. His tank gun, it just sort of sticks off his back. It's a little odd, but move these. He retains his tank treads. They don't go anywhere. Bump, 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 and there you go. Here's our vicious killer tank robot. Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, very fun. Like I said in the last video, about a $1.75. There are numerous little packages of these things, and one thing I discovered, I don't have the package handy. Ziploc. So it's a little plastic sleeve. You want to take stuff apart, and this actually came with extra parts, which I thought was great. You throw them in the bag, Ziploc it, you're good to go. Fantastic little object. The other guy, the robot cement mixer guy, here he is. Very cool little toy. Very happy with these little purchases that I made. I'm definitely going to look for more of these robots when I have a chance, because they do, like the famous Transformers Devastator, link up to form a giant robot. And I never had one of those. I had a few Transformers as a kid. I kind of got out of it. I grew out of it before Devastator and some of the other ones. Bruticus, I think, was one of them. Before those sort of came in. So I never had them. So, I mean, it's time as a 50-year-old man to finally get my giant transforming robot toys. Because by golly, I'm worth it. Anyway, so here we go. This is the end of the show for today. We discussed who's minding the mint. We discussed how to get along with other human beings, geographically and historically. And we talked about some Daiso toys with a little update on those. So, hope everybody's having a good day and continues to have a good day. And this is Dad from Dad's Den, signing off.